Prateek, can you briefly tell us, because you are the one who have collected large data on surveys on healthcare with gadgets, home monitoring in wellness programs. So if you could bring in your experience, and then we have Tanvi, and then we'll open up for the discussion. Thank you, Dr. Jaya, for a very good.
Thank you, Dr. Bhandari. And it's great to listen to Dr. Ganjo and Dr. Singh about the rural insights, because I think these are a valuable insight considering a large part of the country today reside in those scenarios. Now, what I'm going to do is a little bit different here. So my data points, my presentation really will talk about more from the urban scenario. So, so what I tend to do here is not to really bog you all down with the numbers and the data points. I'm really over next 10 to 15 minutes going to present you the insights that we have collected. And I've been fortunate to we really work in a lot of emerging markets. But I think India, the insights that we have generated are really valuable and much different as compared to any other emerging market. So I'll just directly deep dive into it. I'll take a leaf from Dr. Akash's presentation when he talked about how there is a non-relevant integration, if I can call that, in the traditional healthcare approach to what we are experiencing today. So if we look at the conventional healthcare models, it's pretty much a primary care physician and a hospital. This is what we have all been through for a large part of the of last about 30-40 years. And then about 10, 15 years ago, there is an advent where technology intervened. But again, it was I would like to call it a forced intervention between what was a traditional mode. And there was a technology which came into being. But without a proper integration, without properly developing the workflows, which otherwise would have really made a lot of sense. Now, today, what is happening is, and that's what I'm going to talk about towards the end of the presentation, something that I like to term as healthcare 3.0. This healthcare 3.0 basically is collecting the puzzle pieces, the silos which are operating. I mean, so let me explain this. There are so many pieces around it. There are so many silos in the healthcare infrastructure which are functioning super efficiently. But the problem is they are not functioning all together. So what will be the picture like when we put all of these things together, and how efficiently this will improve the healthcare system today in India? So when we talk about a healthcare scenario overall, really, so I would like to break it down into three primary blocks: interactive care, remote patient monitoring, and asynchronous care. Now, interactive care is, I'm sure that all the people in the room today here have experienced in some way or the other the interactive care. Interactive care is nothing but basic interaction with our physicians, with the cardiologist, with the doctor, an expert, maybe a video consultation, a telephonic consultation, where we are highlighting our symptoms, and they are really probing us with the questions and then giving us a prescription or a further care plan, putting us on a care pathway. Now, to make this interactive care more and more engaging, more and more fruitful, there is an intervention of remote patient monitoring, the most important block, according to me, in the entire healthcare ecosystem. Now, the remote patient monitoring essentially not only gives us valuable data points, but it also ensures that we have a long-term picture of, so it's like creating a clone of an individual for a very long term. What we were 10 years ago and what we are today, if we have to really map it down medically, that is what remote patient monitoring is capable of doing. So of course we can't go back in time and get those data points, but at least we can build a lot of touch points and data points for next 10, 15 years and so on, which will give us a very, very important interactive care and improve the healthcare ecosystem. Asynchronous care, typically, this is just to give you an example of asynchronous care. We scan our prescriptions, our reports, send it out to the doctors. They look at that and maybe send a WhatsApp message or an email in of their opinion on that particular report. Now, again, this was working in silo, in some cases pretty efficiently, but I'll talk about what happens when we really club this up with a virtual healthcare ecosystem. One of the things that has really evolved well over last, I would say, 5 or 6 years is the predictive care. Now, what is predictive care? This is essentially predicting what is going to happen to me uh, over next 2 or 3 years. We have gone to a stage where we can even predict heart failures, heart attacks. that maybe in a couple of years, there's a 90% chance that in a couple of years, possibly I'll have a heart attack. And how we are able to do that is by the integration of machine learning and artificial intelligence algorithms. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about it as we go ahead. But one of the key input data points for this machine learning and artificial intelligence is the remote patient monitoring data. When I talked about the interactive care, let's go one level up in the interactive care. And when we double click this, we find that it not only really helps us take care of what problem we are facing today, but more critical issues. So I'll give you an example. In Africa, for an instance, in a remote place far away from the capital city, where the infrastructure is poor, where there is no physician, doctor, or a specialist to look at the data, today we are cutting down a time of 24 to 30 hours to diagnose an ECG down to 6 minutes. And all that is possible because of the integration of AI with the interactive care. I talked about remote patient monitoring, the data points we are generating, and the decision making, which is aiding the entire system. Asynchronous care, it actually can also, with the technology advent, it also can help us largely to monitor the responses we are getting out of the care which we are receiving from the physicians. Now, when we talk about the virtual healthcare from Indian perspective, and these are some of the points that insight that we have generated in last year during the COVID period, there was a window of about 4 to 5 months, which really helped us understand these challenges. And again, as I said, that these are more urban in nature, so probably it may not be very effective. And when I talk about the rural India, what Dr. Singh and Dr. Ganju talked about, but more importantly, from tier 2, tier 3 cities and the urban cities in India. So one thing is that people did acknowledge, and I'll again talk about some Deloitte numbers here in the next slide, that there is a huge reduced lead time. Why? Because we don't have to sit in the patient, as a patient in the doctor chamber or outside their chamber waiting for the consultations. Attention span is wider and better because now they have the remote patient monitoring data points available. So they can make more informed decisions. So rather than writing a test and asking you to come back and follow up, here what they are going to do is essentially look at the data which is already available on the dashboards on the EHR systems. Continuous monitoring is another piece because when we are on remote patient monitoring, I think we generate enormous amount of data which is so valuable that it not only can give you a better access to the healthcare, it can also define a lot of timely detection of critical conditions, for an instance, heart failure. Cost reduction is obvious because you're visiting hospital much lesser. It's only for critical cases or surgeries. Visits are much lower in number. Adherence to medication is improved now because your doctor, your healthcare provider can see what exactly you're doing with the dashboard data that we are filling on each day. Then, I talked about the remote patient monitoring data set that we are generating, the long-term data set that we are generating. This allows more accurate diagnosis because it's not one of diagnosis. It's a diagnosis over 5 years, 10 years, maybe a couple of years, but it's a long enough diagnosis, long enough data points to give you more accurate diagnosis. And identification of unknown comorbidities. One of the highlights of the data that we collected in those 5-6 months window, a lot of people did not even know that diabetes, for example, can ultimately lead to a heart failure. This is of course because of lack of education, lack of knowledge on these data points. But a simple problem as diabetes can ultimately lead to it can act as a comorbidity for a heart failure. So these are interesting data sets which allowed us to really evaluate how the Indian population is faring basically in the current times with a less access to healthcare. And of course, higher efficiencies because now medical resources can be used in alternate ways because the systems are less cramped up at this point in time. Now, what are the outcomes? So I talked about some numbers that Deloitte has collected from these virtual healthcare points. So over 50% physicians really see enhanced coordination because now the patient is more responding, more receptive to what is being told, and more adherent to protocols which are being offered to them. Then over 2/3 surveys, they rated the consumer experience far better as compared to their physical visits down to the hospitals. On an average per visit, they would be able to save as much as 2 hours remove the travel time, remove the time you're waiting to see a doctor, queuing up in the billing counters and so on. So it's a huge efficiency that is building into the system. And then of course, it expands the consumer and physician access, because people who were earlier not able to get these appointments and access to the physicians who is far away is now much easily available. Now, coming to some of the compliance and technical challenges that we have identified, it's not always goody as we progress, because of course there are a lot of good points when we talk about the remote patient monitoring or virtual healthcare, but it does come with its own set of technical and compliance challenges from the patient point of view. Adaptability, we figured, is pretty low. So newer and newer devices are getting introduced in the market. It becomes very difficult for a lot of patients to really to adhere to those or to adapt to those technologies. Now, one of the silver linings I'll call of COVID-19 is that people have become more receptive to adopt these new technologies, adopt this. Basically they are more receptive to the technologies now. Protocol adherence is low. We know in our own lives that if we have to start a new habit, or we have to take some measurements, for example vitals, for a long period of time, we do that for 10, 15, 20 days, but we often tend to then fall off, and the adherence is not very high, and that's pretty obvious, because this is not something which is part of our regular routines that we have been doing all through our lives. The readings are irregular and measurements are not very accurate in certain instances, because people do not have a very good knowledge about which devices to buy, which are compliant devices, which devices are calibrated, non-calibrated. So that is one thing that we tried addressing during that window. And then again, lack of understanding, because use of the machine again is important criteria to have successful readings and measurements out. So far, the delivery is only data driven, so I mean basically it's a live interactive discussions when needed with the doctors, with your physicians. But asynchronous delivery, as I said, also plays an important part when we have enormous amount of data through these data collection devices. Network availability, connectivity, of course, we have in India, we have really come par the old age when we had huge amount of data challenges. But even now, in some of the tier 2, tier 3 towns, we see the availability of network and connectivity is not as good. Dr. Singh talked about the regulatory framework, and it really holds true. It's a different topic altogether, so I'll not dig deep into that. But that's another technical issue in the entire system. And then, as I said in the beginning, I think all the key components working in silos is the biggest challenge. So quickly, over next couple of minutes, I'll talk about some of the elements which are required to really improve this patient compliance. So the first off, it's data management. Now we see how these, so doctor is working at their own chambers, talking to the patient, getting some data, writing prescriptions, which are offline prescriptions. Then we have, patients who have some data points collected, written on the WhatsApp messages, lost in the sea of messages. Further down, we have, we go to a particular lab, get the hard copy of reports, no record of those data. So centralization of data is super important. First thing that we should really look at is how can we develop the EHR systems and have the data, asynchronous and synchronous data system, which is the digital data as well as your hard copy of data, converted down to a easy to store and process data and actionable insight, most importantly, because what good is the data if we cannot really action that data and bring it to the benefit of the patient. Adoption of technology and workflows are very important. Dr. Ganju talked about it. I'll reiterate that we have to really improve upon our existing workflows to include the virtual care as a part of the caregiving in the virtual healthcare ecosystem. It's super important. We can't do without unifying the offline and online approaches. We can't, no approach can really function well without the other if we have to really develop a combined ecosystem. It has to really become a plan A from plan B. We have to really unify devices, make the online consultations, all the teleconsultations as the primary mode. Right now, what we are doing is we are using it as a plan B when we can't visit to a particular doctor. Again, I'll not really go deep into data security and privacy, but we all know that possibly if given a choice, we would trust a bank system more as compared to online medical record systems, right? So we have all our, for example, cards, credit cards, and saving accounts, our our loan accounts and whatnot, all linked into one particular system which we trust with, because we know these are very highly secured databases. Similar kind of thing really need to evolve in the healthcare space, where the patients can trust these data security databases, and then really be open to share that data across when it goes to the down to the doctor level. Then one of the key important part is selection of hardware. It is super important that these hardwares are very, very simple. This is one thing that I personally feel is a very big deterrent in adoption of the technology, which is we load the patient up with 5 different, and I know in the audience there are people who are listening who have really experienced this in last year when we ran this pilot. And I think one of the things is that this has to be really simplified. It has to reduce time, improve the compliance, and the touch points have to be really limited. And the device selection has to be really need based. We cannot have 5 or 6 devices lined up for people who are, for example, just battling with diabetes or blood pressure, for an instance. So it has to be really customized approach. One of the things that I strongly believe in that can really change the entire game is the integration of AI and machine learning. We have the data, but as I said, what good is that data if we can't really make sense of that data? So I have a slide which will really tell you what amazing thing we can do if we really mine that data into the right direction. Predictive diagnosis I talked about in the beginning, that is super important for a futuristic virtual healthcare ecosystem, and it cannot be done, it cannot be taken care without leaving AI and machine learning algorithms into the entire into the entire block. Most importantly, last but most important, is the user experience and interface. This is something that we really, all of us, when we ran this pilot, I think we figured that the experience was probably not seamless. There were connectivity issues because most of these devices are Bluetooth enabled. People did find a bit of difficulty to sync the devices to their mobile systems. It was device driven. It has to be device agnostic. It should really function with any sort of device, and a single platform care pathway should be able to govern the entire data that we are collecting in the process. So integration of device, diagnosis, consultation, and patient monitoring. Unless that happens on a single platform, these are all still going to work in silos. Now, I have taken this slide up from Tricog, where I'm currently working in some international markets. So I'll tell you very quickly what the power of the AI and machine learning here is. So I talked about, right, that typically in a very remote town, remote city, an ECG or echocardiography can take anywhere between 24 to 48 or even 72 hours to get diagnosed. Now comes the power of the artificial intelligence engine. What it does is the data is picked up from those devices on a real-time basis, transferred onto the cloud systems, which are again HIPAA protected cloud systems. Now these cloud systems have algorithms built in, and these algorithms, the machine learning algorithms which are there, really process the data and put up the classifiers, put up the data points which are basically which are the issues. So for an instance, in an ECG, if it's an abnormal or a critical ECG, it really highlights those points onto and sends the data back to the cardiologist. Now what happens is the cardiologist who has possibly 500 ECGs lined up to be diagnosis, he or she knows that this is a critical ECG. We need to prioritize that, look at from their expert perspective, send the report out within 6 minutes. So this is what the power of AI can do, really cut down the time from hours and days to minutes, and really save enormous amount of patient life. But just conclude here by talking about the way forward. I told in the beginning that I'll sum up in a slide how this should look like. Pictorial I'll show in the next slide, but one of the things that should really pick up well, and I think in the US it has already started really picking up, initial level. India, we are a little away from that, which is the over-the-air data uploads, really eliminating the need of connectivity tools like Bluetooth, which is cumbersome for the patients to operate on. Uh, this ECG part, which I told you, it's completely data driven. There is absolutely zero human touch. So here the data is taken, automatically everything is uploaded, and automatically the report is out. So that's the kind of efficiency that we should be looking at in the virtual healthcare scenario. Post-operative care, doctors should really mandate that all the patients who are basically on a post-operative care should really be part of a virtual healthcare system. One, to improve their adaptability to the system, and second, of course, to make sure that the adherence to the protocol is taken care of. There are so many devices out available in the market which are multifunctional devices now. So a single device can take a BP as well as a ECG. Similarly, healthcare band, for example, fitness band, for example, can take tens of data points. And these accurate devices are the future in the virtual healthcare space. Health scoring is pretty important. Again, a very detailed topic, but this basically aligns the doctor how the patient is improving or regressing in terms of their response to the medication and the protocols which are being followed. Predictive modeling, I talked about what can happen in a couple of months down the line, 3 years down the line. We know what measures we have to take. Early detection of heart failure is a very common example here. We know that we are at an early stage. What all things we need to do to prevent a final stage heart failure? And similarly, we talked a lot about the workflow to integrate the virtual and physical healthcare elements and setting an care setting which is agnostic of whatever dashboards are available, whatever devices are available. So here, what it should look like, right? We have clinic and primary centers and tertiary care hospital. We can't do away with it. You have to have a surgery. You have to go down to a tertiary care hospital. Of course, the efficiency will improve with the virtual care. Home care and remote patient monitoring will feed enormous amount of valuable data for the decision making of the doctors and improved outcomes. The machine learning and AI edit algorithms and centralized database will help mine that data, the remote patient monitoring data, and really make sense of that data and do a predictive modeling. And then, of course, the teleconsultations, the care coordinations really will take the enormous amount of load on the Indian infrastructure, healthcare infrastructure, which is currently present. And finally, this would become, to me, a compliant virtual healthcare ecosystem. So I'll stop my talk here, and I have the data points. If anyone wants to really double click and dive deep into it, I can share that across, but that's all from my end. Thank you, Dr. Bhandari.